Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair as the alert klaxons blared across the bridge of the UNS Vanguard. The piercing wail reverberated through the confined space, a relentless summons that set every nerve on edge. All hands, battle stations! Incoming signatures. Multiple contacts, hostile vector. Her voice cut through the chaos like a knife, steady despite the knot twisting in her gut, a cold dread that she forced down with years of disciplined resolve. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a swarm of alien vessels emerging from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming like obsidian shards under the starlight. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a fleet materializing from the void as if summoned by some ancient ritual. Centuries of their empire's meticulous planning, whispered and intercepted transmissions, had led to this moment, and humanity's response? A frantic scramble that felt insultingly brief. A defense cobbled together in mere weeks from fragile alliances and scavenged technology scraped from the edges of known space. Beside her, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the ship's wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on his cheek, punched commands into his console with frantic precision. His lean frame was tense, shoulders hunched as if bracing for the inevitable impact. Shields at full, Captain. But these bastards are packing heat. Energy signatures off the charts. They've got us outnumbered 3-1. His fingers flew across the interface, rerouting power from non-essentials like secondary lighting and auxiliary scanners, his cautious nature shining through in the way he double-checked every flux reading before confirming the adjustments. Ensuring no overlook surge could doom them prematurely, Elena nodded, her brave resolve masking the calculations racing in her mind. The Vanguard was a scout frigate, not a battleship, designed for evasion and reconnaissance, not frontline brawls against an armada. She ran the numbers silently. Thrust vectors, shield tolerances, weapon yields, knowing the margins were razor-thin. From the tactical station, Dr. Lila Chen, the team's sharp-tongued xenobiologist, leaned forward, her witty sarcasm a thin veil over the rising tension that etched lines around her eyes. She adjusted her glasses with a habitual flick, her dark hair falling slightly across her focused gaze. Outnumbered? Try outgunned. Those Krell ships aren't just big. They're fortresses. Intel said they've been drilling for this war since our ancestors were painting caves. She zoomed in on the feed with a few deft taps, highlighting weapon arrays that dwarfed anything in the human arsenal, their configurations a nightmare of interlocking plasma vents and kinetic launchers, each one a product of eons of refinement. The bridge hummed with urgency, crew members snapping into position with practiced efficiency, their camaraderie a quiet undercurrent amid the storm. A shared glance here, a reassuring nod there, binding them against the unknown. The air smelled of ozone from overtaxed circuits and the faint metallic tang of recycled oxygen, a reminder of how enclosed and vulnerable they truly were. Elena stood, pacing to the central holo display where the alien formation coalesced into a precise blockade, holographic icons pulsing like a predator's heartbeat. The display rotated slowly, showing approach vectors and firing solutions in stark blue lines against the red threat overlays. Options, people. We can't outrun them, and punching through is suicide. The Krell had blockaded Sol's outer rim, their centuries-old strategy unfolding like a well-oiled machine. Isolate, encircle, annihilate. Every movement was calculated, every ship positioned to maximize coverage, leaving no gaps for escape. But humans? They'd thrown together this defense in weeks, cobbling alliances with fringe colonies and tech from scraps of derelict wrecks, a patchwork of desperation that somehow held. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice measured but laced with hesitation. I can overload the engines for a micro-jump, but it'll fry half our systems. Risky. He glanced at the engineering readouts, already anticipating the strain on the core, the potential for cascading failures that could leave them adrift. Lila snorted, adjusting her glasses again as she cross-referenced scan data. Risky? That's the understatement of the millennium. One wrong twitch and we're space confetti. Yet her eyes sparkled with that inventive glint Elena relied on. The doctor who could dissect an alien virus in hours and quip about it afterwards, turning horror into something almost manageable. The first salvos lit the void, brilliant lances of plasma streaking toward the Vanguard, forcing evasive maneuvers that rattled the deck plates and sent unsecured items skittering across the floor. The ship groaned in protest, a deep vibration traveling through the hull like the growl of a wounded beast. Elena slammed her fist on the console, the impact sending a jolt up her arm. Hale, prep that jump. Chen, get me a weakness. Anything from your scans. The ship shuddered under incoming fire, sparks erupting from a bulkhead as a near miss overheated the outer plating. Alarms wailed as shields buckled at 60%. Red warnings flashing across every station. This was it. The external gauntlet thrown down by an empire that had forged weapons in the fires of 1,000 suns. While humanity's grit was forged in boardrooms and back-alley hacks, desperate innovations born of necessity rather than grandeur. But as the Krell closed in, Elena felt the familiar surge. Not fear, but the raw ingenuity that had carried her species from dirt to stars, from primitive tools to vessels that danced between worlds. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he initiated the overload sequence, his cautious fingers hovering over the final confirmation before committing. Jump in 30. Hold on tight. The core's hum deepened, a rising whine that set teeth on edge. Lila's voice piped up from her station, urgent and analytical. Wait, their formation's too perfect. If we disrupt the lead ship's command net... Elena's mind raced, piecing it together with the fragments of data scrolling past. The plan was forming, hasty and human, born of minutes, not millennia, a spark of chaos against their ordered might. The Vanguard dove, engines screaming as they pushed beyond safe limits, buying precious seconds in the shadow of ancient might. The G-forces pressed against Elena's chest, but she held firm, eyes never leaving the display. Elena gripped the armrests as the Vanguard shuddered, inertial dampeners straining against the dive, the ship's frame creaking under the stress. The artificial gravity flickered momentarily, a disorienting lurch that made her stomach churn. The Krell formation loomed on the view screen, a lattice of angular hulls glinting under distant starlight, each vessel a monument to eons of tactical refinement. Their designs were austere, efficient, devoid of the human flair for aesthetics, pure function honed to lethality. Their lead ship, a behemoth twice the size of anything humanity had fielded, pulsed with energy signatures that screamed coordinated fire, centuries of war doctrine distilled into flawless symmetry. Scans showed redundant command links weaving through the fleet like neural pathways, unbreakable in theory. Command net's the key, Elena said, her voice cutting through the hum of alarms and the distant thunder of impacts. If we slice their synchronization, the whole fleet stutters. Marcus, reroute auxiliary power to the disruptor array. Lila, get me a firing solution on that nexus point, mid-hull. Ventral array. Marcus nodded, fingers flying over his console, sweat beading on his brow as he adjusted the parameters on the fly. The overload sequence he'd started earlier was a desperate bluff, meant to mimic a failing reactor and draw the Krell in close, luring them into overconfidence. But now, with the plan sharpening, he diverted plasma flows that no sane engineer would touch, channeling raw energy through conduits not designed for such abuse. Rerouting now. It'll fry half our relays, but if it works... His voice trailed off, the weight of the gamble evident in his tightened jaw. It has to. Lila's eyes narrowed at her holographic display, tracing the Krell ship's weak points amid the chaos of incoming telemetry, subtle fluctuations in their energy grid, vulnerabilities hidden in the perfection. She was the cautious one, always double-checking vectors and cross-referencing data. But pressure like this stripped away her hesitations, revealing the bold thinker beneath. Solution locked. Disruptor at 80% charge. But they're adapting, scanning us already. We fire in 10, or they scatter. Her fingers hovered over the trigger, ready to unleash the improvised weapon cobbled from sensor arrays and overclocked emitters. The deck vibrated as point defense fire from the Krell skimmed past, a near miss that lit the bridge in staccato flashes of blue-white energy, shadows dancing wildly across the faces of the crew. The air grew warmer, the scent of scorched insulation thickening. Elena leaned forward, mind racing through the scraps of intel they'd scraped together during the approach. The Krell's empire spanned sectors, their warriors bred for endless campaigns in sterile birthing vats, weapons honed across generations in unforgiving proving grounds. Their society was a machine of conquest, every aspect optimized for dominance. Humans, they'd jury-rigged this countermeasure from salvaged probe tech and a dash of code written in the frantic hours of the last jump. Minutes of adaptation against their millennia of preparation, a testament to survival over supremacy. Fire! Elena's command snapped out, terse and unyielding, carrying the full weight of her authority. The disruptor beam lanced out, a shimmering lance of modulated interference that struck the lead ship's ventral array dead center, burrowing into the heart of their command nexus. For a heartbeat, nothing, tension hung thick. Then the Krell formation rippled like a stone dropped in still water. Ships veered off axis, their synchronized barrages fracturing into erratic bursts of fire that lanced harmlessly into the void. Cheers didn't come. Instead, a tense silence gripped the bridge as secondary explosions bloomed on the lead hull, venting atmosphere in silent plumes that expanded like ghostly veils. But the Krell weren't done. Their adaptive protocols kicked in almost immediately, the fleet's edges reforming like a living organism. Probes swarming from launch bays to isolate the vanguard with surgical precision. One probe clipped their port nacelle, shearing off sensors in a spray of sparks and molten debris that rattled through the hull. Alarms wailed, hull integrity dropping to critical thresholds, systems flickering as power surges rippled through the grid. The bridge lights dimmed briefly, casting long shadows. "They're locking on," Lila reported, her voice steady but edged with urgency as she monitored the evolving scans. "We bought time, but the lead ship's shrugging it off. Backup redundancies online already. It's like hitting a hydra." Elena's jaw tightened, the muscles aching from the clench. The cost was mounting. Marcus's hands shook harder now, the reroute straining the core to its limits, warning icons flashing across his display. She could feel the ship's pulse faltering, a reminder that their ingenuity was fueled by fragile meat and willpower, not the immortal alloys of the Krell. "Pull us into their blind spot. Use the debris field from that hit. Cloak us in the chaff." Her order was crisp, drawing on every tactical sim she'd run, adapting on the fly. As the vanguard banked sharply, twisting through the expanding cloud of wreckage, Elena caught Marcus's eye. He managed a grim nod, the brave spark in him flaring despite the fear etched on his face. They shared a moment of unspoken understanding, the bond of those who fought not for glory, but survival. They weren't built for this endless grind like the Krell. Humans won by bending, not breaking. But bending had limits, and the fleet's closing net whispered how close they teetered to those edges. The void outside a canvas of impending doom. The debris field enveloped the vanguard like a shroud, jagged fragments of Krell hull spinning lazily in the void, creating a chaotic veil that played havoc with sensors. The ship moved sluggishly now, thrusters firing in short bursts to navigate the minefield of wreckage without adding to it. Elena gripped the console, her fingers white-knuckled, as the ship's sensors pinged erratic signals, false echoes masking their position amid the electromagnetic soup. The view screen showed only glimpses of the enemy through the haze, distorted shapes that hinted at the scale of the threat. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his reroute holding for now, but the core's hum had turned ragged, like a runner gasping after a desperate sprint. "Blind spot achieved," he reported, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands that betrayed the strain. "But they're adapting fast. That lead cruiser's deploying probe drones, small nasty things with active scans. They'll sniff us out in minutes if we stay put." Elena scanned the tactical display, the Krell fleet a tightening noose of silver wedges, their ancient designs gleaming with the arrogance of a species that had forged empires across stars. Intercepted transmissions had boasted of centuries of preparation, their warriors bred for endless sieges in controlled environments, ships armored like fortresses against any conceivable assault. Humans? We'd thrown together this ragtag armada in weeks, scavenging hulls and code from forgotten outposts and pirate caches, a bricolage of desperation that somehow functioned. But that was our edge, improvise or die, turning the unpredictable into advantage. "Divert power from non-essentials," she ordered, her tone brooking no argument. "Life support to minimal, lights off. We ghost through this mess and hit their flank." Her mind raced. The Krell relied on predictable patterns, their AI tactics drilled over generations in vast simulation networks. Humans thrived on chaos, on the unexpected twist that no algorithm could fully anticipate. The ship shuddered as a probe drone zipped past, its scan beam slicing the debris like a scalpel, illuminating twisted metal in harsh white light. Alarms blared softly, muffled by the blackout that plunged the bridge into dim emergency glows, the crew's faces illuminated by the faint blue of their screens. Beside her, Lena, the auxiliary tech with a wiry build and a perpetual squint from long hours in dim engine bays, cursed under her breath, patching a flickering panel with quick twists of a spanner. Core's at 72% integrity. One more surge and we're venting atmosphere. Her voice was clipped, practical, born of hands-on experience in the bowels of the ship. Marcus shot her a look, his cautious nature warring with the fire Elena had seen ignite in him during the first skirmish. A transformation from reluctant fixer to determined fighter. We can't outrun them. Their drives are too efficient, quantum efficient, pulling more from the same fuel. No, Elena agreed, eyes narrowing on the display as she spotted a cluster of larger wreckage loomed ahead. Remnants of a Krell destroyer they'd crippled earlier in the engagement. Its twisted frame, a potential ally. But we can use it. Lena, rig the forward bays. Load them with those mining charges we pulled from the asteroid hauler. Turn this junk into a trap. Lena paused, her witty retort dying on her lips as she processed the plan, the audacity of it sinking in. Humans didn't build for war. We built for survival, for turning scrap into salvation in the harshest environments. She nodded, already moving to her auxiliary controls with renewed purpose. Charges armed. It'll draw every probe in range like flies to a carcass. As the vanguard slipped deeper into the field, Elena felt the weight of command settle heavier on her shoulders, a tangible pressure amid the recycled air. The Krell had lost thousands in their long campaigns across the galaxy, but never blinked. Their losses mere statistics in the grand ledger of empire. What would it cost them to crush an upstart species like ours? The thought fueled her resolve, steeling her against the doubt that gnawed at the edges. The first probe latched onto a decoy fragment, exploding in a bloom of plasma that lit the void briefly, casting fleeting shadows across the debris. More followed, drawn like moths to the flame of the false signatures Marcus had programmed. Marcus whooped softly, a rare crack in his reserve, a burst of genuine excitement. As the sensors showed the Krell cruiser veering to investigate the disturbance, its massive form shifting course. They're buying it, he said, a grin breaking through the tension. Flanks exposed now, wide open for a run. Elena punched the throttle controls, the ship surging forward with a renewed growl from the engines, whispering through the chaff like a shadow in the night. But as they cleared the field, emerging into clearer space, a new alert flashed across the main display. The lead ship's weapons array swiveling with mechanical precision, locking on their position. Their AI had predicted the feint, centuries of data from countless battles making them one step ahead. Algorithms crunching probabilities faster than any human mind. Evade, Elena barked, her command echoing sharply. The ship twisted violently, thrusters firing in a desperate corkscrew, but a grazing beam clipped their shields, sending sparks erupting across the bridge in a shower of electrical fury. Consoles smoked with acrid wisps. Lena yelped, shielding her face from the heat as she ducked behind her station. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, rerouting power again in a frantic bid to stabilize. But the core whined in protest, its pitch rising to a shrill keen. Shields at 40%. We can't take another hit like that. Hull's too thin now. The Krell beam intensified, carving through space toward them with relentless focus, a river of plasma that promised annihilation. Elena's mind blanked for a split second, panic's cold grip, then clicked back into gear, synapses firing with desperate clarity. Lena, vent the cargo hold, dump the chaff reserves, make a screen. It was desperate, born of that human knack for turning weakness into weapon, using their own expendable stores against the enemy. Lena triggered it without question, her fingers slamming the release. A cloud of metallic dust billowed behind them from the open bays, refracting the beam into harmless rainbows of scattered light and energy. The cruiser fired blindly now, its precision shattered by the interference, bolts lancing wide into the stars. The vanguard darted through the obscuring cloud, closing on the flank with predatory intent. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, the taste of victory sharp on her tongue, mingled with the bitterness of sweat and fear. But as they unleashed their own volley, missiles improvised from hauler tech, guided by Marcus's jury-rigged algorithms that compensated for the ship's erratic flight. A secondary explosion rocked the Krell hull, blooming from within like a flower of fire. Not enough to kill it, but enough to crack its vaunted armor, exposing vulnerabilities beneath. Direct hit, Marcus breathed, his voice a mix of awe and relief as he watched the damage assessment unfold. They're reeling, power fluctuations across their grid. Elena allowed herself a tight smile, the corners of her mouth lifting fractionally amid the strain. The net loosened, if only a fraction, gaps appearing in their formation like cracks in ice. Yet the fleet regrouped with eerie speed, their numbers overwhelming, a tide that could not be stemmed by one clever stroke. One win didn't end the war. It just bought time, precious seconds to breathe and plan the next move. In the dim bridge light she met her crew's eyes, brave sparks amid the fear, reflections of determination in the glow of their screens. Humans bent, but we didn't break, not yet. Elena gripped the armrests, her knuckles whitening as the vanguard shuddered under another Krell barrage, the impacts reverberating like hammer blows on anvil. The hull plating groaned, a deep metallic protest that echoed through the corridors. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the bridge like a frantic heartbeat casting the crew in bloody hues. "Helm, evasive pattern delta, now!" she snapped, her voice cutting through the din with authoritative clarity. The ship lurched, thrusters firing in erratic bursts to throw off targeting locks, the sudden acceleration pressing everyone back into their seats. Sparks flew from a console near Jax, the wiry navigator with quick reflexes and a mop of unruly hair, who cursed under his breath while slapping at the controls to stabilize the flight path. "Shields at 30%, Captain." That last hit fried the port emitters. Regeneration's sluggish. His voice was strained, fingers dancing over the yoke as he plotted micro-adjustments to weave through the incoming fire. Marcus hunched over his makeshift station in the engineering alcove, a cramped nook filled with exposed wiring and diagnostic tools, didn't look up from his work. His fingers danced across a tangle of exposed wiring, rerouting power like a surgeon mid-operation, splicing circuits with makeshift connectors. "Give me 2 minutes. I can shunt auxiliary from life support. It'll get hot in here. But we'll hold the shields." The air was already warming. Recyclers struggling to keep pace, a faint humidity building as non-critical systems dimmed. "Make it 1, Elena said, eyes locked on the tactical display where enemy icons swarmed like angry insects. The Krell fleet loomed, a swarm of angular behemoths, their energy weapons carving glowing scars through the void, each discharge a testament to their technological supremacy. The aliens had planned for this war for centuries, their ships forged in the fires of 1,000 simulated conquests, every rivet and circuit optimized through endless iterations. But humans, we'd thrown together this counterattack in hours, scavenging hauler parts and pirate code to arm a ragtag flotilla of scouts and freighters. And it was working, barely, with shields flickering and the ship listing slightly from uneven damage. A proximity alert shrieked, overriding the ambient noise. One of the Krell interceptors broke from formation, vectoring straight for them with predatory speed, its sleek form cutting through the debris. Jax's hands blurred on the yoke. "Incoming! Torpedoes inbound 3, no, 4. The tracks lit up on his screen, converging like vengeful spirits. "Countermeasures!" Elena barked, her command immediate and decisive. Pods ejected from the Vanguard's flanks, blooming into a deceptive cloud of chaff that mimicked their signature. Electronic ghosts scattering the torpedo's guidance. The torpedoes veered, 2 detonating harmlessly in the debris field with muted flashes that lit the void. But the other pair punched through the defenses, slamming into the hull with a thunderous jolt that shook the entire vessel. The deck buckled beneath her boots, and for a split second gravity faltered, tools and data pads floating in zero-G chaos. A brief moment of weightlessness amid the panic. Elena braced against the bulkhead as systems flickered, lights strobing erratically. "Status." Her shout cut through the settling dust and groans of settling metal. "Secondary hull breach, deck 3, Jax reported, his face slick with sweat as he initiated emergency seals, watching the pressure readout stabilize. "Sealing it now, but comms are down. Can't raise the other ships in the flotilla." Marcus slammed a panel shut with a resounding clang, his face smeared with grease from the hasty repairs. "Power reroute complete. Shields regenerating. Up to 45. But we're blind without those relays. Sensors are patchy at best." The Krell interceptor closed fast, its dorsal cannon charging with a malevolent hum visible even on their stuttering sensors, the energy buildup a glowing aura around its prow. Elena's mind raced, sifting through options like grains of sand. The aliens fought like machines, predictable, overwhelming force drilled into every crew and AI subroutine. But humans improvised, turning the tide with unorthodox plays born of necessity. Jax, roll a starboard. Marcus, can you spoof their targeting with that old mining drone we salvaged from the hauler? It was a long shot, but better than waiting for the cannon to fire. He nodded, already patching into the auxiliary bay via his wristcom, initiating the launch sequence. Launching now. It'll look like a decoy frigate, might buy us a shot at their attention. The drone rocketed out from a ventral port, its transponder blaring false IFF signals borrowed from a gutted freighter they'd encountered weeks ago, a digital masquerade. The Krell ship hesitated, its cannon swiveling toward the bait with a ponderous turn, sensors locking onto the Phantom. Elena seized the moment, her pulse thundering. All batteries fire on that interceptor. Concentrate on the engine nacelles, cripple it. Lances of plasma erupted from the Vanguard's improvised turrets, railguns cobbled from asteroid drills, spitting kinetic fury and high-velocity slugs. The shots hammered home, shearing off one nacelle in a brilliant flare of escaping plasma and debris, the interceptor spinning wildly out of control. The alien craft vented atmosphere in a silent scream, its systems failing in a cascade of secondary blasts. Got him, Jax whooped, pumping a fist in brief triumph, the adrenaline surging through him. But triumph soured fast as the main Krell cruiser, that monolithic bastard they'd cracked earlier, pivoted with glacial menace, its massive frame blotting out stars, its secondary weapons array lit up, a broadside that would vaporize them in an instant, energy coils glowing with apocalyptic promise. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the alarms. Evasive, full burn! The command was raw, urgent. The Vanguard twisted away in a desperate dive, but the beam grazed them, shearing through the outer hull like a hot knife through butter. Explosions rippled along the starboard side, breaching compartments and filling the air with the sharp scent of burning composites. The lights dimmed to emergency reds, casting the bridge in a hellish glow. Jack slumped over his console, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead where a loose panel had struck him. Systems, failing. We're losing thrust. Main engines offline. Elena dropped to his side in an instant, pressing a med patch to the wound with steady hands, the adhesive sealing the cut as nanites began their work. Stay with me, Jax. Marcus, get us moving. Anything you've got. Marcus vaulted the railing to the main deck, hauling Jax upright with surprising strength while barking overrides into his wristcom, his voice a stream of technical jargon. Auxiliary thrusters online, barely. We're limping, Captain, but we'll keep her in the fight. The bridge fell quiet save for the groan of stressed metal and the distant hiss of venting air. Outside, the Krell fleet tightened its noose, their centuries of preparation manifesting in unyielding precision, every ship adjusting to cover the gaps left by the crippled interceptor. Elena straightened, tasting copper from a bitten lip, the metallic tang grounding her. They'd bought time, cracked armor, but the cost mounted. Crewmates injured, systems fraying like old rope. One more push like that and they'd be space debris scattered across the stars. Regroup formation, she ordered into the flickering comms, hoping the signal pierced the interference. Flankers, draw fire. We're not done yet, not by a long shot. In the crimson glow, her crew met her gaze, tired eyes burning with that stubborn human fire, the unquenchable will that had defied odds since the first fires were lit on ancient plains. The war wasn't won in minutes, but damn if they wouldn't make every second count, clawing victory from the jaws of defeat. Elena gripped the command rail as the Vanguard shuddered, inertial dampeners whining under the strain of evasive maneuvers that twisted the ship through a deadly ballet. Sparks danced from a nearby console, brief flares that illuminated the tension etched on every face, but she ignored them. Eyes locked on the tactical display with laser focus. The Krell cruisers were closing in, their formation a flawless lattice of interlocking fire arcs. Centuries of simulated wars etched into every vector, a web designed to ensnare and destroy without mercy. The holographic icons pulsed red, converging like a storm front. Flankers reporting. Jax rasped from his station, voice thick with pain from the gash across his forehead, now sealed but throbbing. He wiped away a trickle of blood with the back of his hand, refusing to yield his post. They're taking hits, but the bastards are adapting, enemy signatures shifting. Looks like they're deploying drones from the carriers. She nodded sharply, calculating angles in her head, tracing potential escape vectors through the clutter of debris and enemy positions. The Krell prided themselves on predictability, on overwhelming force honed over generations in vast training fleets. Efficient, but rigid. But humans, they thrived on the unpredictable, on seizing the chaos others avoided. Root power to forward shields. Helm, pitch us into that debris field from the last wreck. Use it for cover. Let the junk do the work. The ship lurched as thrusters fired in a coordinated burst, propelling them toward the floating graveyard of shattered hulls and twisted girders, remnants of earlier clashes that now became unwitting allies. Alarms blared, proximity warnings as Krell beams sliced through the void, grazing their aft section and sending vibrations through the deck. Heat bloomed in the engineering bay below, a sudden spike that made the air shimmer, and a muffled shout echoed up the access tube, raw with urgency. "Engineering's venting plasma," came Mira's voice over the comm, clipped and urgent, the chief engineer's pragmatism cutting through the static. Mira was the cautious one, the voice of hard limits amid the chaos, always emphasizing the engineering realities that no amount of bravado could ignore, but even she bent when it counted, her decision saving them more than once. "We lose containment, we're cooked from the inside. Plasma flood across the decks." Elena's jaw tightened, the muscle twitching as she gripped the rail harder. "Patch it with whatever you've got. Auxiliary seals if you have to, buy us time." Her order was firm, trusting Mira's expertise to thread the needle. A Krell drone swarm erupted from the lead cruiser's bays, tiny predators swarming like angry hornets, their sleek forms darting with agile precision. The display lit up with targeting pings, dozens closing fast, each one equipped with microscanners and burrowing warheads. Jax's fingers flew across his board, initiating automated responses. "Point defense online. Firing." The Vanguard spat laser bursts from dorsal turrets, carving through the first wave in bursts of vaporized metal, debris blooming in silent explosions that added to the field. But more drones poured in, latching onto the hull with magnetic clamps that thudded through the structure. Vibrations rattled the deck plates, and Elena felt the ship groan as they burrowed, seeking weak points in the armor with relentless determination, drills whining faintly through the bulkheads. "They're inside the outer plating," Jax warned, his voice rising as breach alerts multiplied. Breaching attempts on decks 3 and 5, security teams scrambling. Tension coiled in her gut like a spring, but she shoved it down, refusing to let doubt take root. No time for it now, not with the fleet bearing down. "Security teams to those sectors. Seal bulkheads and flush them with Atmo if you can. Don't let them dig in." She turned to the comm panel, her fingers tapping the engineering channel. "Mira, how long until we can jump? Give me a number." 5 minutes if I reroute everything non-essential, strip the ship bare. "But Captain, those drones are chewing through our EPS grid. One wrong surge and the whole power net collapses." Mira's voice held a note of warning, the engineer's caution a lifeline in the frenzy. "Do it." Elena cut the line with a decisive jab, her mind racing ahead, piecing together the next move from fragments of the situation. The debris field offered momentary respite. Hulks of older ships, maybe human, maybe not, drifting like forgotten bones in the cosmic tide. One piece caught her eye on the scan. A massive engine nacelle, cracked but intact, tumbling lazily end over end, its residual heat signature faint but detectable. An idea sparked, born of spacer ingenuity. "Jax, scan that nacelle ahead. Structural integrity?" He paused, brow furrowing as he isolated the reading amid the noise. "Solid core, but it's venting. Unstable plasma buildup." "Why?" "It's a powder keg waiting to blow." "Because we're going to borrow it." She punched coordinates into the nav console herself, overriding the safeties with a few authoritative codes, the system protesting with warning chimes. "Helm, match velocity. We're slingshotting it toward their formation. Use the momentum." The crew exchanged glances, a mix of surprise and grim acceptance, but no one argued. The human way was to improvise, adapt, turn scraps into weapons when all else failed. Grapples extended from the Vanguard's underbelly with a hydraulic whine, latching onto the nacelle's frame. Metal screamed as they connected, the nacelle's mass dragging them off course for a heartbeat, thrusters compensating with frantic bursts. Krell fire intensified, beams scorching the shields to flickering red, energy dissipation rates climbing dangerously. A direct hit rocked the bridge, hurling Jax from his seat in a tangle of limbs and straps. He hit the deck hard but rolled to his feet, blood trickling anew from the reopened gash, determination overriding pain. "Shields at 30%. We're taking a beating." Elena hauled him up, steadying him against the console with a firm grip on his shoulder. Stay with me. Fire grapples on that cluster of drones. Pull them into the nacelle's exhaust wake. Let the venting gas do the rest. He grinned through the pain. That witty spark undimmed even now, a flash of the navigator's irrepressible humor. Turning their toys against him? Bold move, Captain, reckless but bold. As the ship aligned with careful precision, they released the nacelle with a burst from maneuvering jets, sending it hurtling forward like a makeshift missile, trailing ionized gas in a deceptive plume. The drones, drawn by the heat signature and erratic emissions, clustered around it instinctively, then ignited in a chain of micro-detonations as the venting plasma met their power cells. The explosion lit the void, a brief sun swallowing a dozen Krell signatures in a fireball of expanding debris and radiation. Their formation wavered, gaps opening in the noose as ships adjusted to the new threat. Algorithms recalibrating in real time. They're recalibrating, Jax reported back at his station and wiping blood from his eyes. Bought us 2 minutes tops, make 'em count. Elena allowed herself a breath, tasting the acrid smoke now filling the bridge from smoldering panels, a harsh reminder of the toll. The cost was mounting. Another system offline, another crewman down in the fray below. Med teams rushing to contain injuries. But the Krell's precision was cracking, their ancient strategies buckling under raw, desperate ingenuity that no simulation could fully predict. Jump prep's complete. Mira's voice crackled over the comm, laced with exhaustion. But it's gonna hurt. Structural stress at limits. Elena straightened, resolve hardening like Durasteel. Then let's make it count. All hands brace for fold. The ship lurched as the jump engines thrummed to life, a deep vibration rattling through the deck plates like bones shaking in a fever, the hull resonating with the buildup of warp energy. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather that had seen better days, scarred from countless crises. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, painting the bridge in flashing red strobes that made the crew's faces look like ghosts in a slaughterhouse, hollow-eyed and determined. The air hummed with static, every system pushed to the brink. Engines at critical, Jack shouted over the din, his fingers flying across the console as he monitored the warp field integrity. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling into his eyes, but he didn't blink, didn't falter. Containment fields holding barely. If we push past 90%, we risk a cascade failure, rip the ship apart from the inside. Mira, strapped into the nav station beside him, twisted in her harness, her dark hair matted against her neck from the heat and sweat. No choice. Krell signatures closing fast. They've adapted to the decoy, probes locking on again. Firing evasion thrusters now. Her voice was steady, but Elena caught the tremor in it, the way her lips pressed thin before she hit the controls, committing them to the dive. The Vanguard groaned, twisting away from the encroaching drone swarm with a series of bone-jarring maneuvers. Outside the viewport, the stars smeared into elongated streaks as the jump field began to warp space around them, folding the fabric of reality into a tunnel of distorted light. But the Krell weren't yielding. Their lead fighter, a sleek obsidian wedge bristling with energy lances, locked on with a predatory grace honed over centuries of simulated wars. Its trajectory unerring. Elena leaned forward, her breath fogging the tactical display slightly in the humid air. Divert auxiliary power to forward shields. Mira, plot the vector through that debris field, use the wreckage for cover. It was a gamble. The asteroid remnants from their earlier skirmish could shield them from scans and fire, but one wrong nudge and they'd shatter like glass against the hull, adding to the debris. Aye, Captain. Mira's hands danced over the holographic interface, rerouting the ship's course with precise adjustments, plotting a path through the densest clusters. The Vanguard banked sharply, engines whining in protest as it plunged toward the floating graveyard of twisted metal and frozen vapor, the debris parting like reluctant waves. Jax cursed under his breath, his voice a low mutter amid the rising whine. Shields at 60%. Incoming lance fire, evading. The ship shuddered as a beam grazed their flank, scorching hull plating and sending sparks cascading from a nearby panel, the smell of ozone sharpening. A crewman in the lower engineering bay screamed over the comms, his voice raw and panicked, cutting off in a wet gurgle, another life snuffed out by the overload, a conduit rupturing under the strain. The loss hit like a punch, but Elena pushed it aside. Grief later, survival now. The debris field loomed, jagged shards tumbling in lazy orbits, a hazardous maze that demanded perfect navigation. Elena's mind raced, piecing together fragments of old training sims and half-remembered spacer tales from veterans who'd faced similar odds. The Krell fought like machines, predictable in their perfection, every move a calculated step in a grand strategy. But humans? They thrived in the mess, in the unpredictable swirl where rules bent and broke. Jax, vent the plasma vents on the port side. Make it look like we're venting drive plasma. Draw their fire there. The ploy would cost them sensors temporarily, but it might buy the seconds they needed. He shot her a wide-eyed glance, surprise flickering before resolve set in, then nodded, slamming the override with a decisive tap. Venting now. That'll cook our sensors for a bit, but... A hiss echoed through the ship as superheated gas billowed out, blooming into a false trail that mimicked a catastrophic breach, glowing brightly against the dark. The Krell took the bait, their formation shifting as lances converged on the glowing plume, wasting energy on the illusion. For a heartbeat, the bridge fell silent, save for the hum of straining systems and the crew's ragged breaths. Then Mira whooped, a raw sound that cut through the tension like a blade, relief and adrenaline mixed. We're in the field. Jump field stabilizing, 30 seconds to fold. The words were a lifeline, a promise of escape. Elena allowed a tight smile, but it faded as the ship clipped a drifting boulder, the impact jolting everyone forward against their restraints with a crunch of protesting metal. Alarms spiked again, structural integrity dropping another notch. The hull protesting the abuse. Below decks, the injured crewman's absence left a void. One more hole in their patchwork defense, a silent tally of the price paid. The stars twisted fully now, reality folding like paper under the jump's inexorable pull, the viewport filling with swirling colors. The Krell's lead ship fired one last desperate volley, but it glanced off the debris, shattering a nearby fragment into a spray of ice and stone that pelted the Vanguard's hull like hail from hell, pinging against the armor. 10 seconds, Mira called, her voice rising above the crescendo of the engines. Brace. The command echoed, crew gripping whatever held as the buildup peaked. The universe inverted in a rush of disorientation. A wave of nausea slammed into Elena, her vision tunneling to black as G-forces pinned her in place, the world narrowing to pressure and sound. The ship screamed, a metallic wail that drowned out all else, hull plates flexing to their limits, and then silence descended, profound and absolute. When the haze cleared, the bridge was a wreck of flickering lights and acrid smoke wafting from overloaded circuits. Jack slumped in his chair, groaning as he sat up, shaking his head to clear the fog. We made it. Jump complete, but systems are fried. We're blind out here. No long-range sensors. Mira unstrapped, wincing as she checked the readouts on her station, her movements careful amid the debris. Krell didn't follow, for now. But we've got hull breaches on 3 decks and engineering's reporting coolant leaks. We're leaking atmo, Captain. Slow but steady. Elena pushed to her feet, ignoring the fire in her ribs from the jolt, a dull ache that she catalogued for later. The viewport showed a new starfield. Unfamiliar and cold, but free of pursuers, the immediate threat vanished into the warp. They'd bought time. Precious minutes turned into hours of breathing room. But the cost etched deeper into her crew's weary faces, lines of exhaustion and loss. One more push like that, and there might not be a Vanguard left to fight with, just echoes in the void. She activated the ship-wide comm with a steady press, her voice carrying resolve. All hands damage control. Patch what you can. We're not done yet. Far from it. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the metallic groan of the Vanguard echoing her resolve as the ship settled into a tenuous stability. Alarms blared softly in the background, a persistent whine that clawed at her focus, demanding attention from systems on the verge of failure. She scanned the flickering tactical display, hull integrity at 60%, life support straining under the leaks that hissed faintly through sealed compartments. The Krell Armada was light years behind now, folded away by the jump, but out here in uncharted space, silence could be the deadliest foe, hiding threats in the dark. Jax, reroute auxiliary power to sensors, she ordered, her voice cutting through the hum of emergency lights and the murmur of the crew assessing damage. I want eyes on whatever's out there before it finds us. Full sweep if you can manage it. Jax nodded, fingers flying over his console, sweat beading on his forehead as he prioritized the arrays, coaxing life from fried circuits. On it, Cap, but the jump fried half our arrays, patchy at best. It'll take time, maybe 20 minutes for a full sweep. Longer if the backups glitch. Mira leaned over her station, patching a secondary breach on Deck 4 via remote overrides, her holographic tools flickering as she worked. Time we don't have. Scans showed debris fields ahead, possible remnants of an old battle, Krell or older. If we're lucky, it's just junk. If not... She trailed off, her cautious nature painting the worst without saying it. Her mind already tallying the risks of collision or ambush. Elena stood pacing the bridge with measured steps, her boots thudding softly on the scuffed deck. The crew had patched what they could in the jump's aftermath, welding plates and rerouting cables, but the ship felt like a wounded animal, limping through the void with pained reluctance. She remembered the briefings back on Earth. The Krell, ancient warriors who'd spent centuries fortifying their empire against all comers. Their fleet's a testament to meticulous preparation, ships designed to endure sieges that spanned decades. Humans, we'd thrown together this ragtag expedition in months, driven by grit and whatever scraps of tech we could improvise from frontier yards. It had gotten them this far, evading the Armada's claws through sheer audacity. But the cost was mounting, a ledger of bruises and breaks. 2 crew lost in the last skirmish, their absence a quiet ache, and now the Vanguard bleeding air from microfractures, life support lights yellowing. A sharp ping interrupted her thoughts, a sensor chirp cutting through the hum. Jax's eyes widened, his posture snapping to alert. Contact! Multiple signatures closing fast. Not Krell, something else. Smaller ships, but coordinated like a pack. The view screen flickered to life after a moment's lag, revealing a swarm of angular vessels, their hulls iridescent under the distant starlight, shifting colors like oil on water. Elena's pulse quickened. These weren't the blocky Krell behemoths, all brute force and symmetry. Sleeker, almost insectoid, they darted like predators scenting blood, their movements fluid and adaptive, probing the edges of the debris. Hostiles? Mira asked, her hands hovering over weapons controls, fingers itching for the firing solution. Unknown, Elena replied, forcing calm into her tone even as adrenaline surged, steadying her voice for the crew. Hail them. Standard first contact protocol. Open channels, no aggression. We don't need more enemies in this mess. Jax transmitted the signal. A burst of standard frequencies carrying greetings in multiple languages and codes, but the response came not in words. A barrage of energy lances that grazed the Vanguard's shields, sending sparks across the bridge and a cascade of warning lights. The ship shuddered, inertial dampeners straining to absorb the kinetic shock. Shields at 80%. Mira shouted, her voice sharp as she adjusted power flows. They're testing us, probing for weaknesses. Elena's mind raced, connecting dots from fragmented intel. The Krell had pushed them into this nebula fringe, a graveyard of forgotten wars where old grudges lingered in the dust. These new players, scavengers picking at the bones, rivals to the Krell Empire, opportunistic hunters, no time to guess, only to react. Evasive maneuvers. Divert power from non-essentials, lights, recyclers, everything to engines. Give me speed. The order was barked, prioritizing flight over fight. The Vanguard lurched, weaving through the debris as the alien ships pursued. Their fire precise but not overwhelming, lances stitching the void around them. Jax plotted a course, dodging hulking wrecks that loomed like silent sentinels, their shadows swallowing sensor returns. One near miss clipped a fragment and the ship bucked violently, a fresh alarm wailing about a power surge in engineering, lights flickering in response. They're hurting us, Jax grunted, wiping sweat from his eyes with a quick swipe. Toward that big derelict ahead. Looks like an old Krell carrier, half buried in the field. Massive, but dead. Elena's jaw tightened, weighing the trap against the opportunity. The carrier silhouette filled the screen, its bays yawning open like a beast's maw, cavernous and inviting. If they could use it for cover, turn the relic against the hunters. Helm, take us in. Mira, prep boarding tubes. Wait, no. We're not boarding. We're improvising. She turned to Jax, her voice steady amid the chaos. Can we hack its systems? Jumpstart those old defenses with our gear? Jax blinked, processing the audacity, then grinned faintly, his witty edge surfacing through the strain. Krell tech? It's a fortress of failsafes layered like an onion. But humans built the Vanguard with modular overrides, plug and play for salvage ops. If I sling a probe with our universal adapter, maybe we can wake it up. Do it, Elena said, the plan solidifying in her mind, mad, linking their jury-rigged systems to an ancient enemy relic. But it was all they had in this desperate hour. The aliens closed in, their shots peppering the shields, dropping them to 50% with each near hit, the barriers flaring under stress. A lucky hit vented atmosphere from a forward compartment, and Elena felt the chill seep in through the seals, a reminder of the stakes as the temperature plummeted locally. Mira fired countermeasures, blooms of chaff exploding into the void like metallic snow, confusing the lances momentarily. 2 minutes to the derelict. If this doesn't work, we're sitting ducks, easy pickings. Mira's warning was grim, her focus unwavering. The probe launched, a slim dart vanishing into the carrier's guts through a rent in the hull, its signal threading through dormant conduits. Jax hunched over his readouts, cursing under his breath as code clashed. Alien protocols resisting, human hacks probing for cracks. The pursuing ships adjusted, one breaking off to flank them with a swift turn, cutting off retreat. Elena watched, heart pounding as the vanguard slipped into the carrier's shadow, the massive structure shielding them momentarily from the barrage, its bulk absorbing a few stray shots. "Got a handshake!" Jax yelled, triumph cutting through the tension. Partial control turrets coming online, power routing to weapons. The derelict shuddered to life with a deep rumble that vibrated through the vanguard, ancient mechanisms grinding back into motion. Dormant turrets swiveled on rusted mounts, their ancient cannons belching fire into the swarm with renewed fury, kinetic rounds and plasma bolts lancing out. 2 alien ships erupted in silent fireballs, debris scattering like confetti across the field, the explosions chain-reacting with nearby fragments. The rest scattered, regrouping at a distance, their aggression checked by the sudden revival of the graveyard's guardian. Elena exhaled slowly, slumping back into her chair for a moment's respite, the adrenaline ebbing to reveal the exhaustion beneath. The bridge crew exchanged glances, relief mingled with exhaustion, a shared nod acknowledging the narrow escape. They'd turned the graveyard against the hunters, human ingenuity bridging centuries of alien prep in mere seconds, a hack that no Krell simulation had accounted for. But the carrier's systems flickered, unstable after centuries of dormancy, and a new scan showed the aliens signaling reinforcements, fresh signatures winking into existence on the edge of detection. "We bought time," she said, activating comms with a steady hand. "All hands hold positions. This fight's just starting, stay sharp!" The void held its breath, the vanguard nestled in the bones of old wars, ready for the next wave. The derelicts hum, a temporary ally in the endless night. Elena gripped the armrests as the derelict's alarms wailed, a piercing screech that cut through the hum of the vanguard's engines like nails on steel. The sound was archaic, a relic's cry, but it spurred action. Reinforcements were inbound. Dozens of alien signatures blinking to life on the tactical display, closing in like wolves scenting blood, their vectors precise and unrelenting. She punched the console, rerouting power from non-essentials to the jury-rigged shields, bolstering the link to the carrier. "Jax, get those auxiliary thrusters online. We can't sit here like target practice, need mobility." Her voice was steel, brooking no delay. Jax, the wiry engineer with grease-streaked cheeks and a perpetual squint from peering at fine schematics, nodded from his station below the bridge, where he'd jury-rigged a secondary interface. His fingers flew over the patched controls, sparks flying as he bridged human tech with the ancient alien hull, code and circuits merging in a volatile dance. "On it, Captain. But this old girl's got a mind of her own. Systems are fighting the overrides, legacy protocols kicking back." A low groan echoed through the ship, metal protesting as the derelict lurched forward under partial control, its massive frame shielding the vanguard from the first probing shots that glanced off its armored flanks. Lena, the comms officer with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue honed from endless negotiations, leaned into her mic at the auxiliary station. "Hailing the fleet, this is Vanguard. We're pinned in the graveyard sector. Request immediate backup. Alien carriers deploying fighters." Static crackled back, the response delayed by the interference of the debris field, jamming signals like a fog. She cursed under her breath, slamming a fist on the panel in frustration, the impact echoing her impatience. Nothing. Comms are jammed solid, debris in their jammers. The view screen lit up with incoming fire, plasma bolts streaking past in vivid arcs, one grazing the derelict's flank and shearing off a chunk of armor in a spray of molten debris. Elena's stomach twisted. They had minutes, not hours, before the noose tightened again. The aliens had prepped for this war for centuries. Their ships sleek monuments to calculated dominance, every line and system a product of evolutionary design. But humans? They improvised, turning the tide with whatever lay at hand. Mark options. We can't outrun them, not with this beast dragging. Elena turned to the tactical specialist, broad-shouldered and steady as the ship's keel, his calm demeanor an anchor in the storm. Mark zoomed in on the scan with a gesture, his brow furrowed as he traced the web of wreckage around them, identifying patterns in the chaos. The derelict's got dormant mines in its bays, old defensive ordnance from Krellstock. If we detonate them in sequence, we could create a chain reaction, turn the graveyard into a kill zone. He paused, glancing at her with measured gravity. Risky. The blast could take us out too, proximity's too close. Do it, Elena said, her voice steel, committing without hesitation. No room for doubt now, only action. Jax whooped from below, the thrusters firing unevenly as he coaxed more power, propelling them deeper into the debris with stuttering bursts. The aliens pressed closer, their formation tightening with confident numbers, fighters peeling off to probe the edges. As the first wave of fighters dove in aggressive passes, Mark triggered the sequence from his console, initiating the timed detonations. A mine cluster erupted in a bloom of fire and shrapnel, ripping through 3 alien craft in a hail of fragmentation, their hulls crumpling under the assault. The chain followed, explosions rippling outward like dominoes toppling, the void filling with twisted metal and venting atmosphere, a symphony of destruction that lit the field in staccato bursts. But one fighter slipped through the maelstrom, ramming the derelict's side with sacrificial fury. The impact rocked them like a seismic wave, lights flickering as bulkheads buckled inward, the carrier's frame shuddering. Damage report, Elena barked, steadying herself against the rail as the deck tilted. Breaches on decks 3 and 4, Jax yelled back from his perch, his voice strained over the din. Sealing them now, but we're venting atmo, pressure dropping. And damn, that hit knocked out half the turrets. Overrides failing. Lena's console beeped urgently, a cascade of alerts demanding attention. Captain, they've adapted. Second waves hanging back, launching drones to probe the field, learning from the chaos. Elena watched the display, the aliens' centuries of prep shining through, their tactics shifting on the fly, algorithms absorbing the human unleashed disorder and countering. Mark's face hardened, resolve etching deeper lines. We push the derelict into their path, use its mass as a battering ram, plow through the line. It'll shred their formation, but we'll lose the ship in the process. Elena's mind raced, weighing the loss against exposure. Lose the derelict, and they'd be naked in the open. Sitting still meant death by attrition. Helm, plot the course. Jax, reinforce the forward struts, whatever it takes. Weld if you have to. The engineer scrambled below, grabbing a portable torch and welding plates across stress points, sweat beading on his forehead as flames licked the air. The derelict accelerated under duress, its ancient engines wheezing back to fury under human coaxing. A Frankenstein's monster lurching to life. Alarms blared as the aliens unleashed a barrage, bolts hammering the hull in a relentless tattoo. A console sparked nearby, showering Lena with embers. She swatted them away with a curse, rerouting signals manually through backup lines. Impact shuddered through the frame as the derelict plowed into the alien flank, its colossal mass crumpling ships like foil under the inexorable momentum. Explosions bloomed in silent fury, chains of detonations rippling through the pack. Debris pelted the Vanguard's shields, straining them to the limit with each collision, energy readings spiking. Elena held her breath, the view screen a maelstrom of fire and wreckage, the chaos beautiful in its destruction. Then quiet fell, broken only by the settling hum of systems. The alien formation fractured, survivors peeling away in disarray, their cohesion broken. But scans showed the cost. The derelict was a dying hulk, its core destabilizing, radiation warnings flashing. Eject the core, Elena ordered, decisive in the calm after. We ride the shockwave out. Use it to slingshot clear. Jax hit the command from his station, and the derelict birthed a final blaze. The core's expulsion propelling the Vanguard free in a burst of plasma and force. They tumbled free, battered but alive. The aliens' reinforcements scattering in disarray, caught off guard by the gambit. Elena sank into her chair, the bridge crew silent, breaths ragged in the aftermath. The void stretched empty ahead. but the fight lingered in every dented bulkhead and flickering light. They had won this round. Human grit against alien eternity, a small victory in the Grand War. Elena gripped the armrests as the Vanguard shuddered back to life, emergency lights flickering across the bridge like hesitant fireflies in the gloom. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, demanding attention from a crew too battered to jump at every ping. Their movement slowed by fatigue and minor injuries. "Status, Jax," she snapped, her voice cutting through the din like a lifeline pulling focus from the haze. "Engines at 30%, Captain. Hull integrity holding, barely, with patches everywhere. That shockwave scraped us clean of debris, but the aliens are regrouping. 2 cruisers vectoring in from Grid 7. Heavy hitters." Jax's fingers danced over the console, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill from ruptured coolant lines seeping through the hull. "Lyra?" The engineer patched in from below decks via holographic feed, her face smeared with grime and streaked with effort, eyes sharp despite the ordeal. "Core ejection bought us time, but we're leaking atmosphere in Auxiliary Bay 3. Slow seep, but it's there. I can seal it, but it'll take rerouting power from weapons. No guns for a bit." Elena nodded, mind racing through the implications, prioritizing survival. The aliens had planned for eons. Vast armadas forged in stellar forges, AI tacticians simulating every variable from solar flares to mutinies. Humans, they improvised with duct tape and desperation, turning flaws into lifelines. "Do it, prioritize seals, keep us breathing. Mira, what's our best evasion vector? Get us out of this kill box." Her gaze flicked to the navigator seeking options in the starfield. Mira, the navigator with a keen eye for cosmic flows, leaned forward, her eyes scanning the holographic starfield with intense focus. "Portside thrust into the nebula remnant ahead. It's thick enough to mask us from scans, but risky. Could fry sensors in the interference. Leave us truly blind." The ship groaned as another debris fragment glanced off the shields. Sparks erupting from a nearby panel in a brief shower, the impact a reminder of the thin margin between safety and catastrophe. Elena felt the vibration in her bones, a deep thrum that spoke of the hull's weariness. They'd turned the derelict into a makeshift bomb, riding its death throes to scatter the first wave, debris still settling in the wake. But these reinforcements were heavier, their hulls gleaming with the precision of a civilization that built wars like monuments, unyielding and vast. "Engage," Elena said, committing with a nod. "Full burn into the nebula. Jax, angle us evasive. Zigzag like we're drunk on cheap synth whiskey, throw off their predictions." A chuckle escaped Jax, brief and ragged, a spark of levity in the grim. "Aye, Captain. Punching it? Hold on." The controls responded with a lurch, the Vanguard surging forward, thrusters flaring blue against the void in stuttering bursts. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling veil of gas and dust that swallowed stars whole, its edges tendrils reaching like fingers. As they plunged in, visibility dropped to meters, the view screen filling with ethereal glows, pinks and violets twisting like living smoke, the interference static lacing every feed. Alarms shifted tone, proximity alerts now, the alien sensors struggling to penetrate the haze, their signatures fuzzing on the display. "They're firing blind," Mira reported, her voice steady as she adjusted course. "But one's closing fast, estimate contact in 2 minutes, cutting through the fringes." Lyra's hologram flickered, her image warping slightly in the interference. "Seals holding for now. Weapons back online in 30. Make it count when they do." Her tone was pragmatic, focused on the tasks at hand. Elena unstrapped, pacing the short length of the bridge, her steps deliberate to conserve energy. Her crew watched her, faces etched with fatigue but eyes sharp, drawing strength from her presence. This wasn't their first scrape. Humanity's edge came from moments like these when plans dissolved and guts took over. Raw instinct prevailing. Options. We can't outrun them forever. Not in this state. She invited input, fostering the collaborative spark that had saved them before. Jax glanced up from his readouts, mind whirring. "Boarding pods? Too slow and exposed. What if we vent plasma from the auxiliary bay? Turn the nebula into a fireworks show. Disrupt their scans, maybe blind a sensor array with the ionization." Mira shook her head, countering quickly. "Risky. Could ignite the gas pockets in here. One wrong spark and we're the show, vaporized in a flash." Her caution balanced the boldness, a necessary check. The deck trembled. A distant explosion rocked the ship, muffled by the nebula's density. They're probing, Lyra warned over the comm, her voice tight. Direct hit on the outer hull. I'm losing pressure in secondary lines. Elena's jaw tightened, decision crystallizing. No time for perfection, action now. Jax, prep the vent. Mira, plot a tight loop. Bring us behind them when they stumble into the fireworks. Lyra, give me weapons now. We'll need them for the kill shot. The engineer's nod was grim, visible in her hologram. Online, fire when ready, torpedoes loaded. Her hands would be flying below just as the others were here. As the alien's cruiser emerged from the mist like a shadowed behemoth, its beams lancing wild through the nebula in desperate sweeps, Elena took the weapons station herself, sliding into the seat with fluid motion. Her hand steadied on the controls, the targeting reticule dancing in the interference, a ghost in the glow. Fire. The command was calm, precise. Torpedoes streaked out, vanishing into the swirl of colors guided by Mira's vectors. Seconds later, the vent activated. A brilliant plume of plasma erupting from the Vanguard's side, igniting the nebula in a cascade of false signatures and blinding flares that lit the gas like auroras gone mad. The alien ship veered sharply, its formation breaking as sensors overloaded in the electromagnetic storm. Readings flooding with noise. One beam caught the edge of their plume, blooming into a secondary blast that sheared off a dorsal fin from the cruiser, debris spiraling away. Looping now, Mira called, her voice triumphant as the ship twisted, engines screaming in protest, slipping behind the disoriented foe through a gap in the haze. Helena fired again, torpedoes burrowing into exposed vents on the cruiser's underbelly, proximity fuses triggering deep inside. The cruiser shuddered, venting atmosphere in a silent scream, its trajectory veering wild as systems failed. But the second alien ship adapted faster, shields flaring as it locked on through the chaos, weapons charging with an ominous hum that penetrated the nebula. A warning klaxon howled, direct incoming, no evasion possible. Brace! Elena yelled, gripping the station as impact hurled them sideways, consoles sparking in fury. Lyra's hologram vanishing in a burst of static as connections severed. The bridge lights dimmed, emergency protocols kicking in with red backups. Jax fought the controls, sweat flying from his brow as he stabilized. Shields at critical. We're blind on starboard. Nebula's playing havoc. Elena hauled herself up, tasting blood from a split lip where she'd bitten it in the jolt, the copper sharp on her tongue. The cost was mounting. Lyra might be hurt below, systems fraying like worn fabric. But they had the first cruiser limping away, trailing plasma. Mira, emergency jump cords. Get us clear, anywhere but here. As the second ship closed, its weapons charging with that same ominous hum, Mira's fingers blurred over the nav console. Jump in 10. Hang on, it's rough. The nebula churned around them, a deceptive sanctuary turning hostile with every passing second. Elena met Jax's gaze across the bridge. No words needed, just the shared understanding of those pushed to the brink. Humans didn't prepare for centuries. They adapted in the fire, forging paths where none existed. The stars jumped as the drive engaged, yanking them from the fray in a wrenching fold. But scans lingered even as they transitioned. The second cruiser pursuing, unyielding in its hunt. They weren't done yet, not by any measure. Jax's hands trembled on the console as the jump's aftershocks rattled the hull. Stars snapping back into focus like shattered glass reassembling. The nebula's tendrils clung to the viewport, glowing faintly against the void. But the scanner pinged relentless. Pursuit vector locked, closing the gap with inexorable speed. They're matching our vector, he barked, voice raw from shouting orders over the chaos. That cruiser's got engines like a demon, quantum drives pulling ahead. Elena braced against the bulkhead, her split lip stinging as she wiped away a smear of blood with the back of her hand, the metallic scent lingering. Lyra groaned from the medbay alcove where she'd dragged herself, clutching her bandaged arm, but her eyes sharpened when she heard the alert. Pushing through the pain. Damage report, port thrusters at 40%. If they fire again, we're done. Shields can't take it. Her voice was strained but resolute, the engineer's mind already seeking fixes. Mira, still strapped into the nav chair, didn't look up, her fingers dancing over the flickering holoscreen as she recalibrated. Nebula's our edge still. Dense pockets ahead could mask us if we thread the needle tight, use the gravity eddies. The ship lurched as Jax fired auxiliary bursts, weaving through the cosmic fog with erratic dodges, the hull creaking under the strain. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat on the fritz. The alien cruiser loomed on the rear feed, its sleek hull scarred from their earlier exchange, but its weapon arrays gleaming untouched, ready for retribution. Centuries of their empire's meticulous design, forged in simulations spanning generations, and here it came, unyielding as fate. Jax glanced at Elena, who nodded once. Adapt or die, that was their creed, etched into every human soul. Divert power to evasion protocols, Elena ordered, sliding into the co-pilot seat beside him, her presence a steadying force. Her cautious nature warred with the fire in her gut. She'd always favored plans over punches, methodical approaches in command school, but this fight demanded both, blending strategy with raw impulse. Mira, plot a slingshot around that gas cluster. Use the gravity well to fling us out of their arc. By distance. Mira's witty retort died on her lips as a proximity warning shrieked. The cruiser unleashed a salvo, plasma bolts slicing through, the nebula like knives through silk, trails of ionized gas marking their path. The first hit grazed the shields, sparks erupting across the bridge in a fountain of electrical discharge. Lyra cursed, hauling herself up to reroute circuits from her alcove, her brave streak shining through the pain as she worked one-handed. Shields holding, barely. Jax, evasive pattern delta, roll and dive. He yanked the yoke hard, the ship groaning in protest, rolling starboard in a tight spiral that pressed G-forces against them. The nebula's hues shifted wildly outside, purples and blues swirling into a hypnotic blur, but focus sharpened on the tactical display. Enemy closing to weapons range in under 2 minutes, locks acquiring. Sweat beaded on Jax's brow, dripping into his eyes, but he blinked it away. Their ship, a patchwork of human scrap and ingenuity, couldn't outrun that beast forever, not with the damage mounting. We need a wild card, he muttered, mind racing through the toolkit of tricks. Elena's eyes lit up, the pieces clicking like a puzzle solving itself. The probe array, repurpose it, turn their sensors against them with feedback overload. It was madness, but the kind that won wars, exploiting the enemy's strengths as weaknesses. Mira grinned fiercely, already pulling schematics onto her screen. Overloading their feedback loop. If we sync the probes to mimic their own signatures, flood them with ghosts. Her fingers flew, coding on the fly. Lyra patched in from her position, voice steady despite the chaos enveloping her. Rerouting now. It'll fry our auxiliary systems, but it'll buy time. Probes away in 10. The team moved as one, terse commands flying. Jax stabilizing the flight path through the eddies, Elena coordinating power flows from the co-pilot board, Mira fine-tuning the hack with precise inputs. The cruiser fired again, a near miss shaking the deck like an earthquake, but they held, the ship bucking but intact. Probes launched in a deceptive swarm, ghosting through the nebula like fireflies in the dusk, their emissions tuned to echo the alien's own. The alien ship's sensors lit up on the feed, confused by the echoes, false targets blooming across their grid in a digital mirage. For a heartbeat, the pursuit faltered, the cruiser veering to chase phantoms, its lances firing wide. Jax pushed, the engines to their limit, the ship surging forward into clearer space, the nebula's grip loosening as they broke free. But victory tasted bittersweet, the aftertaste of risk. Scans showed their own systems straining, relays overheating. Lyra's arm worsening from the exertion, her hologram flickering with pain. The aliens would adapt soon. Their centuries of preparation weren't for nothing. Algorithms evolving mid-battle. Elena met Jax's gaze, resolve hardening like forged alloy. We keep moving. They prepared for war, we prepare for whatever comes next. Improvise till the end. Jax gripped the console, fingers white-knuckled as the stars blurred past the viewport in streaks of light. The nebula's fading haze gave way to open void, but the alien cruiser's signature pulsed on the rear sensors, persistent, closing the gap with mechanical precision that brooked no mercy. They're adapting faster than I thought, Elena said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead, tracing rivulets down her temple. She patched in auxiliary power manually, rerouting it to shields, but the readings flickered erratically, systems on the edge. Lyra slumped in her chair in the alcove, her injured arm cradled against her chest, the makeshift bandage soaked through with blood. But she forced words out. Probes bought us time, but their fire controls recalibrating. Locks sharpening. We need a new play or we're prey. Jax nodded, eyes scanning the tactical overlay with frantic intensity, seeking any edge. The alien ship was a behemoth. Centuries of war doctrine etched into its hull. Layered armor that could withstand planetary bombardment. Redundant systems ensuring survival. Weapons that could glass a planet from orbit. Humans had jury-rigged their frigate in days, not eons, turning scrap into a ghost in the machine, elusive but fragile. But scraps ran out eventually, and they were close. Options? He asked, terse, demanding ideas. Lyra winced, forcing herself, upright with a grimace, her wit dulled by pain, but her caution sharpening her focus into a blade. Dump the cargo. Overload their scanners with debris. Make it look like we're breaking apart catastrophically. Then flip and hit their engines with the mining.